Who among you have worked with terrible bosses? Right? A lot of us. Good afternoon, everybody. Can I just invite you, just entice me for a second? Can I invite you to just close your eyes? Just close your eyes. And just imagine. Imagine that everyone is invested in everybody else's success. Think about your family. You're invested in your spouse, your husband, your wife. In the office place, you're invested in your team, your peers, your leaders. What would culture look like? What would silos look like? What would performance look like? Now let's open our eyes. What did it look like? Have you ever considered looking at your organizations? Have you realized that we're actually expected to work in teams? We're expected to be able to perform in teams. We're expected to deliver in teams. But how are we evaluated? Are we evaluated as teams? Or are we evaluated as individuals? That's what I want to challenge today. It's been several years we've noticed, right, that we have a new generation that's come in. And that's going to challenge the workforce. But at the same time, you look at it, we're not adjusting the workforce. We're not adjusting the way we're working. We're expecting to deliver in teams. But we're actually not adjusting. We're expecting to deliver and perform in teams. But we're still appraising on how an individual performs, not even how they perform with others. So think about that. So if we're saying that we're expecting to work in teams, if you are currently now working in an organization where you're expected to lead teams, are we equipped to be able to serve them? I've been working for about 25 years now in corporate. And one of the things that I realized is that it doesn't matter what culture, doesn't matter what generation, doesn't matter what country, what continent. It's all the same. It's really just the same. You'll be able to find out. I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of great leaders, great leaders, men and women, individuals that perform to what the organization expects them to perform. But aside from that, they're also thinking about you as a person, as an individual. They look at the development of you as an individual, your goals, your life. They know the name of your daughter, your son, your wife. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, on the opposite side, I've also worked with individuals that are very self-serving. Very self-serving. Who among you have worked with terrible bosses? Right? A lot of us. Even Frances talked about that earlier. She was saying that we have 52,000 books, if I remember, about leadership. But we don't see a lot of great leaders. And I've learned from that. We learned from that. Okay. And so what did we learn? What happens here is when you work with individuals that are self-serving, they look at their initial interest, what serves them first, what will drive their agenda, and at the same time, they actually don't admit mistakes. They blame others. In the opposite, you see serving leaders. What do? They work with individuals. They ask questions. They know exactly what motivates you. You're not just a thing. Have you ever felt like you're just a thing? An item that is required to deliver something? Have you ever felt that? I've felt that. Working with terrible leaders, I've felt like a thing. And I just want to be able to share with you a story. So I remember working with a Gen Z employee. Okay. Throughout my journey, I've realized that being self-serving will never work with Gen Zs. It just won't work. So I had a Gen Z individual, just recently got regularized. Okay. Salary got increased. Week after that, set a schedule with me. Set it for an hour. Do you know what we talked about? Sat down. Wasn't really expecting anything because I'm used to getting these meetings. As soon as we sat down, he actually demanded to get a promotion and a raise. Sounds familiar? Right? Sounds familiar? Gen Zs, you get this? Right? And why is that? Why is that? How would you respond? How do you think I responded? How would you respond? I see some flat smiles. I see some nodding. How would you respond? Instinctively, if I was younger, I would have pounced on that situation. I would have pounced on it. It's like, what? You're asking for a raise? You just got regularized. Right? And you want to be promoted by the end of the year. Very specific, by the end of the year. Right? By the end of the year. So I realized that pouncing on the individual is not the best thing to do. So what did I do? I remembered I attended Salt and Light's brand boot camp. Pauline Furman was talking about the Gen Z generation and the situation that they were brought about. They were born with a cell phone in hand. They're expecting everything to be instant, right? They're expecting things to be able to know things on a shallow basis, know a lot of different things, and that's enough for them, enough reason for them to get promoted. But I need to understand. I stopped myself from being self-serving. I thought about myself, why is he talking to me about this? Why are you talking to me about this? So I asked a question. And I asked another question. And I asked another question. And I needed to really understand, where is this coming from? I wasn't just assuming. If I simply assumed, I could have dissed him off, walked out of that room, and not talked to him afterwards. But I wanted to understand. So I needed to be attentive. I needed to not be judgmental. I needed not to look at how I wanted to respond, but how he wanted me to respond. At the end of the conversation, what happened was, I was able to turn it into a mentoring conversation. If I thought about how I wanted to respond, do you think that's exactly what would have happened? It would have definitely not. It would have turned out to be something more sour. So I found out just recently he got promoted finally after 2 years. Okay, after 2 years. But that's actually already fast. In the firm that we came from, people need to wait about 3 years to get promoted. But this person got promoted in 2 years. This person was a top performer. This person was somebody that you can leave behind. They will work, they'll get everything done, but is not a good team player. So let me challenge this. Let me challenge the status quo right now in organizations. What can you do to be able to measure not the individual performance of individuals, and increase the weight of them being able to work with others. So let me just leave you with something really quick. Let's just put a serving mindset into practice. I'd like to just have everybody just invite you again, stand up for me, please. Just stand up and look for another individual that you've not spoken to yet. I know you've been speaking to a lot of people, and that's okay. So just talk to some, look around the room, turn around, look for one individual that you'd like to connect with. Okay? Just do one thing first, introduce yourself. Introduce yourself. Usually, when we do networking, what we do is we look for individuals that we will benefit from. We look for individuals that we can connect with, that we can leverage the relationship into our lives and business. And I'm assuming most of the people that you've identified kind of had that in place, in mind, right? Now let's shift this. Usually when you introduce yourself, you say, hi, this is my name, right? And this is what I do. That's usually the default introduction that everybody has. But let's now challenge that as well. Let's change your mindset. Instead of you thinking of what you can benefit from the person, what if you change your introduction to just saying, hi, my name is, say your name, and they just simply say, how can I help you today? It's a very different approach. You're trying to connect, but you have to ask the person, how can I help you today? Not about you benefiting from the relationship, but how can you help that person? Okay? Thank you, everybody. And let's leave you with this. Imagine applying this change of mindset to your work, to your friends, and to your family. Okay, thank you, everybody.